Good morning. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Avenue.
bringing you this week's Ascended World. And, well, collective energy share, really. That's what this is all about.
Right.
So, so, where do you want to start today?
No, I've had a lot of little things come up and kind of mess with me, but I haven't found a theme or anything consistent that I can point to. Just little irritations, and it's always other people's behavior. Imagine that.
Good morning, Yasmin. Yeah. I went through, let's see, last week. What did we talk about last week? What was it that we talked about last week? It was really good, too. Well, they all are.
Odd.
That was like a month ago, right?
Yeah, and I haven't written anything down in ages.
Yeah, I didn't write anything down on last week.
I can go look.
It'll probably come to me about the time you find it.
I know. Let's see. Last week was messages everywhere. What about soul fragments and what we call soul
Oh,
retrieval? Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I focused on that for a couple of days and that felt great. What I found happening in the latter part of the week was the feeling, of being completely, I don't want to say lost because lost wasn't quite the word because it doesn't even convey it, like un undefined. That was really more the word, right? So I found that I got to these places of like, who am I? What, like, it was like such a weird thing, and it was in this different way of not who am I, but like, what's even the purpose, right? And not in a negative
Right.
way, not even a negative way, just in this completely neutral, observant way, and it felt really weird because it was such a different feeling, right?
Right.
Oh, look, we got dinged. Yeah.
Which reminds me, I gotta turn things off.
But yeah, like, and I was thinking about it this morning before we got on. So I was looking at it and I was thinking about it. It was feeling into it about, it's almost like when we collect all, so we collect all, or not collect, we realize the soul fragments are never gone. We realize that all those parts are whole, right? So, and that everything is a part of us, right? So then
Right.
you get, then like when you feel, so like I said, I spent a couple of days really focusing on that. And then it was this feeling of, well, what if I feel no resistance anymore? Because you don't. As soon as
Right.
you hold that energy of wholeness, right? You feel no, when you feel no resistance because you feel like, oh, it's all a part of me, right? So
Right.
there's no lines anymore. Like, it all just sort of like runs together into this piece. The presence is huge. And at the same time, the ego gets completely lost in terms of, because the ego, right, is like what the job of the ego has been, identity and separation. So when you say, well, I'm not separate, then the ego
Right.
is, well, then now what?
Right. Right.
and
Yeah.
and and right away the ego starts kicking in. Well, what's your purpose? Like,
Hmm.
what do I do? Why aren't you doing anything? Da, 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 da. And I recognized that, and I was watching it. I was like, wow, but it had such a different energy than before. Like, it was just really really interesting. It was almost like the words were there with a completely different energy. And it's been this, the ego says, well, there's got to be some resistance. There's got to be something negative. There's got to be something to work toward, or some
Right.
obstacle, or
Some
some,
motivated.
there's got to be another shoe, the other shoe's got to fall. Like there's got to be
Right.
something. And when you're sitting there going, no, it's all good. It's all easy. It's all flowing. We're just creating and enjoying it. You know, the ego's like, no, 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 no. We can't do that this way.
Right. Right. Almost like, remember, we agreed not to do it this way.
Yeah,
Almost like you're letting everybody down by not continuing to follow those rules and play that game.
right, right. And how dare you drop all your toys and leave the playground?
Right.
I actually heard that in my head. I was in the car driving someplace over the weekend, and I just heard that. How dare you drop all your toys and leave the playground?
Because if you think about it, because if you take your attention off of it, the playground goes away and it goes away for everybody.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah. So it was. I actually laughed when I laughed like just we did when I heard that in my head, going, okay. But it's all the playground. Like it's not like there's nothing that's not it. It's what we choose for it. But I mean, this has been this constant thing in my head of like, oh well, what if this happened? What if this? Because the ego's trying to create anxiety or fear or something to hold on to,
Right.
a challenge or an obstacle or whatever. And it's like, well, no, no, no need. It's all good.
Right.
And we just are not familiar. Oh, and then the ego started saying, this is where I have my little like crisis thing. Well, not really a crisis, but it was just this whole like, um, what it was this whole, okay, well, if you're going to do that, if we're doing that, then what are you going to do? Like, if you're still present, then you're letting everybody down, right? By not doing something as a part of this game, right?
Right. That obligation of you can't evolve, you can't remember beyond what everyone else is remembering.
And they don't understand you, so you're just like, if you exist in that wholeness, they just won't understand you, and you just won't be part of that playground. And how dare, that was that whole how dare you, right?
Right. Right. Which, I experienced that some with in this whole thing, like with my family. It's like as I would stop giving my attention to certain energies, it was very much a like slam the fist on the table, like, how dare you ignore that? Because that's part of what we agreed to do together, and that's part of this whole thing. And no, you can't not do that.
Right.
And it took a while, and it circled back around, and as it did, things just have catapulted forward. But it was so much like a temper tantrum. Like, you're not playing the game anymore.
Right. We were having fun with the game. Why are you not playing? Right.
Right. We were doing so well.
In our roles. And yeah,
We created so much dysfunction. How can you just walk away?
exactly. Exactly. And that's a big thing for many. And this is something that, I've worked with many on as they go through these changes in recognition and observation and consciousness, when we allow ourselves to just step out of the roles, right? And to come into this wholeness, into completion and whatever, to say, I don't need to play this role anymore. I don't need to play this game anymore. And it was funny as I recognized, over the weekend there was something somebody said that made me realize that part of the discomfort was that feeling of letting everybody down because I walked, because I'm sort of coming into this much different place, right? Even if it's really subtle or whatever, and it actually manifested into a conversation about being in place. Like we were just talking about, um, oh, like the movie Grease was on, right? In our generation, I don't know, I've watched Grease. I can quote you pretty much the entire movie as many times as I've seen it. And I said, yeah, it's funny is of all the plays that I was in over the years when I was in performing arts camp and all that kind of stuff, I'm like, I always wanted to be in Grease when I was younger, and I never was. And then I was like, and it was just this conversation we're having offhand, and then because they were joking that like because I knew all the words, I knew all the songs, and like pretty much anybody I know who I grew up with was pretty much in the same place. And then I was thinking, and then somehow that came to me. I was like, that's what it's like. That's part of the feeling of letting down the cast because you're walking away from your role. And how can they put the play on if you don't take that role?
Right. Right.
And then there was that feeling of I was missing something by choosing to do this differently now.
Right.
And so, and I keep on saying, okay, well, I'm open to like allowing, and like I allow all possibility and allow it to, allow myself to see everything I do in different ways. Um, and sometimes the challenge I find is because, we have so many habits on how we've gone about doing things before, right? Even just like, how do you brush your teeth? How do you brush your hair? How do you, like things like that? Like, what
Right.
is your daily, personal hygiene routine? And if
Right.
a lot of people say if you choose to do it differently, like say you choose to just like do it in a different vanity, or you do it at a different time, or with a different hand, or a different brush, or like those kind of things can just shake us out of our routine enough, like anything that we do differently to break our habits help us to see things differently. So the thing is, we say that we have so many layers of habits. We have so many layers of going about, okay, well, when you do this, this is what I do. Like when I do this, this is what I do. Every time I do this, I
Right.
do this, right? And then say, well, what if I didn't? And the ego says, oh,
Right.
no, 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 that's how we manage this. That's how it's managed. You got to do it this way, right?
Right. Right.
Say, no, I'm going to do it differently. Like we are there in the energy. And that's sort of some of I think the discomfort too is we get into that place of, okay, well, I'm committed to allowing that differently. But I don't know what that looks like because I've been doing it the same way for so long. Like, how do I do it different? Right?
Right.
A friend of mine is in a long-term relationship that um, I that we've talked about, and like I've been working with her all through the relationship, most of the relationship. And so they've been together, I think, 7 years. I mean, they're older, and you know what she's discovered about him, her fiance, is, I mean, they just got engaged a couple of years ago, but they're not in any hurry. Like, their kids are grown adults and whatever, and all that kind of stuff. They don't even live in the same house, right? Well, part of the challenge they've had is this woman is, are you there? There you popped out. Yeah, you're frozen. You disappeared. Are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. I hear you, but I don't see you now.
Okay.
So, anyway, I'm just going to continue talking and hopefully you pop back on. So he's been very, and for whatever reason, like I don't know what his childhood is like or what his underlying things are. I sort of have a feeling, but it isn't. That's not my concern. It's my friends. And so he's just been emotionally unavailable, and apparently most of his relationships have ended over the years because of him being emotionally unavailable. Well, he and my friend have been together for a long time, and they've worked together on so many things. And they do work really well because they're both very independent. They're not needy with each other. Almost to this like opposite degree of many in a relationship, but they love to travel together. They love to do things together and all that kind of stuff. So the big challenge in their situation is that he's had this pattern his entire life of being for whatever reason that is still unresolved, right? Or has been unresolved, but is still trying, like he's changing it. But this relationship is different because she is insistent and consistent, and on the other end of the spectrum of over, like very, very in your face communicative, which is great. But that's also pushed him, like they've had to get pushed in many cases to the end of their ropes in terms of their relationship, which is like, you know what, if you don't want to be in this relationship, just let me know.
Right.
Things like that. And that just sort of like enough to, without being nasty, like coming from a place of love, but also coming from a place of self-love and self-worth, is saying, yeah, okay, I love you and I enjoy us being together, and I would like this. And if that's, like if you don't feel the same way, then let's just move on. And she said it over the 7 years I think they've been together, like I don't know, 5 or 6 times. And it's like, it's almost like that pushes him out of his pattern to change for a while. And then he starts to develop like and so like in the beginning he would fall back faster, and as they've gone along, it's funny that he's just more conscious because he's not aware of his own habits. And I think that's what we do all the time. When we're talking about this recently, my friend and I'm like, I think the thing is that he's just not aware of how he is because he's done it for his entire life, and he's in his 60s, right? So um, that's where I think is our biggest challenge. And when we change our energy, or we put ourselves into this next phase, and we allow ourselves to let go and to be roleless, really to be anything and everything in wholeness, is to say, well, I don't even remember how to be that way yet. And it's not that we can't access that, we can, but it's like how, like the question that we have within ourselves is, how do I play this out? How do I do this while still being present here? And how do I do it all differently?
Yeah, I think last week we talked about the new community, and that you master just the doing part. I don't think the doing and feeling.
You're breaking up, like most of that was broken up. Okay, you just pop back in. Hold on a second. All right, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, now say that again.
Last week we talked about how the D comes from that, the doing stuff comes from that place of being.
Yeah. Okay, now you cut out again. But I think what you're saying has to do with the being part, right? When you're in that relationship from a place of being, it's a different way for us to um, approach things. Yeah, and we're not used to doing that.
I guess everything, relationship with your family, relationship with the sibling.
Froze again. Hmm. Maybe try popping out and coming back in.
Different Wi-Fi.
So, well, we're sitting here waiting. Um, yeah, it's been an interesting thing. And it's interesting that we're talking about this and the connection. It's like, well, the connection is breaking up, it's changing, and we're feeling limited, or it feels like it's tripping us up. And it's really us remembering how to connect from a different place of being, which is a perfect representation here. Oh, there you are, and you're moving.
Yeah, I got rid of my 5G and see if that'll make things better.
Yeah, well, this is much better. So I say, what I say when you're gone is, what's funny that we're talking about, like doing things differently from a different way of connecting and being or whatever. And here we are with the internet and stuff.
Not connecting.
I was like, what a perfect representation of that. So,
Right.
okay, so repeat what you were saying before about the relationship thing.
Okay, so if we haven't mastered the art of or the just the state of being in every facet of ourselves, then we can't allow the doing to come from that place.
Right. Right. And that's a big thing in relationships when you have one that's in a different place. Like when but it's interesting because like in this particular situation, it's awesome to see like the agreement that they've had, right, to play out this relationship together, right? And for her to be in a place where, all right, like, I mean, she's consciously worked in a place over the years of this with herself on being in a place of I can take it or leave it. I can take it or leave
Right.
it. Live with the relationship and without it. I love being with him and I'm fine being without him. And so it feeds into that place in that place of I don't want to say disassociation, but like non attachment, right? Then she
Right.
can be even more honest because then she's not afraid, right? Well, if I say this, he might walk away.
Right.
Okay. If I say this, he might walk away and we'll both be the better for it because then it's time for us to move on. So, honestly, it's been a beautiful thing to watch because for her to get to that place and then it's almost like not that he's running to catch up, but it's like this agreement they had for her to sort of smack him upside the head every once in a while for like that self realization of like what he's not looking at within himself.
Right.
You know? So it's interesting to watch all that happening because we have that happening with parental and children roles and like spousal roles and jobs and what we do and how we are presenting ourselves in life and it's just an interesting dynamic of like a completely different way of existing, but it's really challenging to explain because anybody who's not there yet just doesn't understand it.
Yeah. Well, and I think we've said all this before, but I think we're at a place of a whole new level of what this means in our day to day, a whole new level of being. It's almost like being at a higher level and allowing that higher level to permeate where we are.
Right.
That's good. That feels really good.
Yeah. And to permeate, yeah, where we are and everything that we do within this, part of our consciousness.
Almost like allow it to permeate how we create this.
Yeah.
We understand that we create our reality, this everything around us. Allow that being from the higher place to infiltrate that level of creation.
Yeah. Yeah, because and that's where it's that retraining of getting beyond the ego, going where's the other shoe going to drop, you know, like where's the conflict, right? Because we forget, well, there's no conflict if I create it without conflict, or even if I create conflict, it's not real, it's just part of the whole thing, or it is real, but it's just part of the whole thing in terms of, okay, and it's resolved. There is this, and this is resolved for whatever reason, because this is trying to align. Like when you start seeing everything is trying to align and balance and harmony, which that's what you and I have been working on here for
Well,
months, right? Aligning all that in balance and harmony and saying, okay, well, if there's conflict here or there's some kind of rubbing going on, then obviously there's something that's out of alignment, right? So then allow that alignment. I'm just going to allow it. And that's a completely different way of living, like, and being here, right? Is just saying, yeah, okay, well, let's just align that.
well, and with the full understanding that aligning something may mean that it just completely falls away. That doesn't mean that it all turns out the way you want it and everything's all rosy. It may just totally fall away to
Yep.
the place where it wasn't even necessary. And being okay with not controlling what that looks like.
Right. Right. Yeah, and not caring that you're not control. Like it's just sort of like, or just not caring because that denotes a certain kind of energy, but just accepting what that looks like, whatever that is.
Right, right.
And yeah, and so that's where I was like last week with my ego was like, well, now what? Like, why aren't you reacting to this? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you propelled to do this? Why aren't you like driven by this? Right? That's like the questions that was going on in my head, and it's like
Right.
I don't need to be because it really is. I'm just creating it, and I'm just being in every moment, and wherever I am in every moment is perfect, and I know what I'm to do in every moment. So okay,
Right.
it is a way of So what's interesting is it's a challenge sometimes in talking to many because we're all going through, like as I was having a conversation last week, we're all going through this period where we have such huge, intense changes going on to get there, right? To get to that place again of remembrance.
Yeah. Right.
It's so it's so incredibly individual for everybody, right? And it's no less intense. It's just a different picture of whatever is in your reality of creation, right? So, but it doesn't make it like anybody's worse or better or whatever. But the thing is, it's so incredibly individual, and yet it's so incredibly collective because all of that is the same energy. It's just a different picture of the same energy, right? So, um, so then we get into the place of instead of thinking, oh, you wouldn't understand because you're not going through it, it's a matter of knowing you understand because you are going through it in your own way, even if it looks very different in this reality than mine, right? And we're in this together, and that's the whole. That's the whole right now. It's funny because sometimes when we get to that place, that purview of wholeness, then we lose the feeling of connection, right? Because it starts feeling very solitary, and that's sort of like this balance for us to make of okay, no, well, it's important for us to balance and to connect with others as well as go through our individual shifting because it keeps us, it's not the misery loves company, it keeps us in this alignment to understand that it's not just me, it's all of us. And we're shaking this out. It's almost like when I was in Puerto Rico in May, and that one day that I was feeling the rumbling of the earth underneath it, right? And last week I had, we had a hurricane come through last week. And
Right.
so many people ask me, well, what do you think about this? And what do we think about the Bahamas? And what's your take on this? And everybody's like, we've gotten into this habit of analyzing every event, right? In terms of, well, how does that fit in? And what is that in the bigger picture? I'm like, well, it's all the same thing.
Right.
And I was explaining to somebody, we were talking about it last week, and I said, we created this set of dimensions that create this planet to be this interrelated picture of interconnection, right? In separation, interconnected at the same time, right? So we created that to be that way. And really, that's when that perception of shaking things out started coming to me, because it's like, and so when something gets out of balance, as we see in nature and biology and plants and all kinds of anything, right? It starts to balance itself out if it's given the freedom to sort of let it happen, right?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
sometimes balancing things out includes killing off, dying off, or dying off and replanting elsewhere, or a part of you dying to be rebirthed in another way, right?
Right.
Or what,
Right.
like look at, like we're talking about this, it's as collective as it is individual. So what if you look at the whole Earth, right? As like, okay, so the whole Earth is shifting to and remembering its original form, going back to Lemuria, right? And so this whole full cycle and resolution and completion. And to do that is to shake out all the stuff that's not in alignment.
Right. Right.
That's what we're doing in our realities, right? So of course
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Earth is doing the same thing, and we're all very interrelated part of the Earth, whether we want to pretend we are, we are or not. We know we
Right.
are, or else we wouldn't be here. So if we are out of alignment, the Earth is shaking out everything that's not, whether that means people or what we call catastrophic events, or things that are going to shake out a lot of change to help it bring back into alignment, right? So the um, so nature, whether it's a volcano, an earthquake, a tornado, a hurricane, it's what create that's the rumbling that happens to create that balance again. And so we
Right.
judge that, because then people start saying, oh well, then obviously the people in Bahamas are evil, right? They needed to, like, because people like start judging that, or like, or poor, or if they put on the other side of, oh, look at how victimized they are, right? And I always
Right.
laugh. Okay, if you live, here's a clue. If you live on an island
Yeah.
in the Gulf Stream, you're gonna have hurricanes
Right.
eventually.
And you always have. This is not a
Right.
new thing.
No, it's not anything. And it's not that I don't, like, yeah, okay, I understand. Like, it is quite a thing to pull everything out of your reality and everything. But that's your choice to make, right? If you live on a big active earthquake fault and then you lose your house because of an earthquake, okay, well that's part of the guesswork that you chose, or the chance that you chose to take,
Right. Right.
and you chose to be a part of that. Somehow that realignment that needs to happen when the earth shakes it all out.
Right. Yep.
So there's no judgment, because there's no good or bad. It's not like, oh yeah, remember Katrina when it came through New Orleans? It's like, oh, that's because it's like, this whole like spot of dark energy and blah blah blah. There's voodoo there and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, okay, it's all the same stuff. Whether you
Right.
want to, however how it's presented, it's just different, right? There's no good
Right.
or bad. It's just that wholeness of, okay, well, something came out of balance. Something's out of balance, then something's going to happen to create that balance again. And it's like we've been asleep for so long about forgetting about balance, and that's been part of the game that we've been playing, the playground, to say, no, there is nothing but balance, right? And if we create duality, we dictate that there must be balance in duality, right? So if we still have this, as we complete this particular kind of existence, it's to come around full circle, right? So that it's that perfect the picture of that balance and duality so that we can sort of pat it down, let it go poof, so we can move into whatever the next game is, you know?
Right. Right.
So what's the difference when, what's the difference if you get like a little rash on your hand or there's a major volcano that erupts? Nothing. There's no difference.
Right. It's just one's, bigger scale, but it's the same thing.
Right, and bigger is still a judgment. So it's like, well, you know what I'm saying? It's funny that we say that
Right.
bigger is now, or that's not as much, or 100 people were killed versus one person, or like, or 100 million people were killed versus one person getting sick. It's no different. It's just us coming to that realization, and not that we're it, becoming like impassive to it, but we're becoming accepting of it. There's a completely different energy around
Right. Right.
that. To say, okay, well, if that's manifesting, so the key is to turn back around to the basics, right? Is if that's happening for, like, if this is happening on such a big scale on a regular basis, what have we yet to rebalance within ourselves individually that isn't there? Because otherwise it wouldn't be manifesting in that way.
Right. Right.
So you want to know about the hurricanes? Here's the deal. Look inside.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
You. It is
Right.
you. It's me.
Right. Yep.
Sometimes we have to let something, how many times that I've seen more and more lately is how many times it's really important to allow things to play out so that they rebalance, even if the ego is freaking out about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I was looking at that because over this weekend my daughter was home from school since she's over on the ocean at Wilmington. Again, at least it was only a week versus a month this time versus last year.
Right.
And so we're in the new house, and so now we have 3 floors, right? And so the whole thing is, I have 2 cats, my Brianna has 2 cats, and my youngest has 2 cats as well. So of course she comes home and she brings her 2 cats. And at the other house we had 2 floors, and there was plenty of room, but it got a little bit weird. But here it was beautiful because everything is rebalanced, right? Because her 2 cats, her room is up on the top floor, and her 2 cats hung out on the top floor most of the time. My cats hung out on the main floor most of the time, and my other daughter's cats hung out in the basement most of the time. So they all had their own balanced space, and it was just so much. Even when they crossed, I mean, of course they kept on going up and down or whatever, but it was interesting to see how much easier it seemed to be, right? When they were just like, oh hey, right, this is rebalanced now, you know. So
Yeah, it feels like something's shifting. I don't really have the words. I'm not sure what we came up with, but I feel like something's aligning, rebalancing, unfolding.
and maybe it's just allowing ourselves to remember how to allow that rebalancing, right? And allowing and acceptance and flow and free of judgment.
Right.
And there's something else in there that I can't quite get words for. Like remembering to do something else differently. It's like remembering how to continue on in form and existence within this while allowing the bigger balancing and harmonizing sort of to shake out and aligning, right? That's not quite the words. But you know what I'm saying? It's like a still propelling yourself forward in a flowing manner, but also allowing at the other level, if things look a little chaotic and crazy or whatever, and being cognizant of, am I creating this or am I just allowing it? Because there's a very fine line between it.
Right. Right. Well, and I do think, like you said, you're talking about the hurricane. It says what's going on with the hurricane. Just look within. Is all of this, even though we're looking at it on what a global, universal, multiversal scale, it's all within. So going in to look at that resolution that's displayed externally. If that makes any sense.
And many of us are, I mean, we're pushing ourselves to that point of not having any energy to give to fighting it anymore. Like
Right.
I see that happening with so many people, right?
Right.
Like it gets to this place of such chaos and so much turmoil or resistance or however you want to look at it, or just distraction, such this level of overwhelming, like just an overwhelming amount of things to prevent that sort of paralyze you, that you
Right.
force yourself to have to just let go of it
Right.
all. Take a bath. Take a bath. Go and meditate. Do
Right.
a walk or
Yeah. I feel like everything's what I'm seeing is like a mudslide, but I don't really have the words to go behind what we've shifted.
yeah.
One statement.
So basically, just the ability to allow ourselves to do that. I think that's like allowing ourselves to remember how to do that, how to um, create and allow at the same time from this different perspective, um, and how to remembering how to be in that and do from it, because this is a very different way for us to exist here, like keeping the eye on the ant hill as well as the entire planet as well as the entire universe, the multiverse,
Right. Right.
simultaneously, consciously.
And
So we
well,
do.
and then a certain level of trust goes in with that also, is trusting that in watching the anthill, it's watching everything.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so whatever all that is.
Right. That's feel it shifty.
Yeah.
Here's the yawn.
Oh, me too. All right, let's go and do that.
Okay. lost all track of time.
Yeah, me too. I lost track of where I was too.
Wow.
Oh, I saw a bunch of things out there. One thing was how this really pulls us outside of the dependence on space and time, like almost completely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was like, oh yeah, because I'll just, sprinkle this in here, sprinkle this in there. Yeah, and I was seeing so many things from all of a sudden it's like this much bigger perspective, historical things and things all through, like the ages and thought. And I was like, oh, well, this is pretty nice how that just like tied together in a nice little bow.
Well, and the first thing I saw was connecting into that wholeness and realizing that I held the belief that being in the wholeness was lonely, and that the separation was created for that belief that you are not alone, and that there was that automatic resistance to, well, but I want to keep this separation because I don't want to be alone. And it was connecting back into finding my voice, connecting back into that fullness of the wholeness, and then seeing how so much of my behavior has been to make sure no one else is uncomfortable, even if I'm uncomfortable, making
Right.
them not uncomfortable. So those two things were really like huge for me.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah, things that I hadn't seen for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it was almost like I fast forwarded 10 years, I rewinded 10 years. I went through the span of 20 years and like and it was just like, yeah, and see this weave together. And because when you're not looking at it in the time in a linear way, it's just there. It's this creation.
Right.
There was something in there about, yeah, there was stuff that I saw because there was stuff that I saw. Well, what about like, oh, like, because I was trying to grasp onto certain things, and it was just like,
Right.
what does it matter when you can see it this way?
Right.
And I was like, oh, you're right.
Yeah, I got so much of that. Oh, but what does it matter?
Yeah. And then it was like everything's okay. Like it was like such a sense of everything's perfect. And like it was such a sense of everything's okay in perfection and its wholeness.
Right.
That was a big breath of freedom.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So see how that manifests in more clarity. It feels like there's going to be pieces and parts of it that come up.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because the ramifications of shifting that whole belief.
Yeah, is huge. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. This is Angela Coulter, and
Sarah C. Avignoni.
we'll see you next time on the Ascended World Weekly Collective Share. Have a good one.